Well, hey there, DevCentral community. This is John. This is Security Sidebar, and this is DevCentral Connects. And so it's great to see everybody out there today. I know some of you have already commented in the little comment sections. As we always do, we're live streaming to YouTube and LinkedIn and Periscope. So it's great to see everybody. I'll be interacting with you today, just like we always do. So just to address a couple of comments right off the bat. You know what? I'm gonna try to say this name correctly. Zulfikar. Can we see episode 1 through 3? So this is a Security Sidebar, episode number 4. So the first episode was back several weeks ago. We just talked about like, hey, this is a new series that we're going to be doing here on DevCentral Connects. Then the next two were actually the second one was on the CVE 2020-5902. That was the big, CVE vulnerability that Big IP had. And then the third one was our episode at Black Hat 2020. So we were in a virtual booth there at Black Hat. We talked about a bunch of security stuff there. And then this is the fourth one. So thanks to Zulfa for asking about that. And then just a couple of little shouts out. I'm going to say hi to Mr. Stephen McAllister, who's out there saying hi. So hi right back to you. It's great to see you out there. And then Miss Taylor has said 100% real, and it is always real. It's always real all the time, right, Miss Taylor? So on that, this show specifically, we're going to talk about how can you differentiate, how can you determine if information on the internet is real or fake? Because shocker, spoiler alert, some of the information out there on the internet is not real. And so how can we discern, right? All righty. So before that, Pasilva, it's always great to see you, my man. Fun show is planned. It's always going to be fun here on DevCentral Connects, and we're always going to be interactive with everybody. And then say hi to Miss Leslie, who's also on the team. So great to see everybody out there today. All right, so we're going to dive into this thing. What I'm going to do is show you along the way today a few examples of some information on the internet, and we're going to talk about, is it real, is it fake, how can we distinguish, how can we determine all that stuff. So with that, I am going to bring in a couple of slides that I have prepared here where we can talk about, hey, is it real or is it fake? So I'm going to add this to the stream. And here is a picture of Mr. Abraham Lincoln. He was the 16th president of the United States of America. He was born back in February of 1809, and he died in 1865 when he was assassinated. And so I never met the man. I didn't get to know Mr. Abraham Lincoln, but I'm told that he was president. I'm told that he was born back then. And so how can I know that all this is true, right? So one of the things that Abraham Lincoln is known for is very quotable quotes, very very wise sayings that we can really take to heart and kind of share in our lives. So on that, the thing that I wanted to share is with Mr. Abraham Lincoln. He was not only born in February and died in April of 1865, he also apparently said, don't believe everything you read on the internet, right? So some of you may have seen this, where Abraham Lincoln, is quoted as saying that. So clearly this is an example of something that is false, that you would not, that did not really happen. So of course the internet was not around in the 1800s. And while he did not say this, it's actually a true statement. Don't believe everything that you read on the internet. All right. So one thing that I wanted to go through though is a quote that is attributed to Abraham Lincoln, and that is, he said, or this is attributed to him: "When I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. That's my religion." All right. So Abraham Lincoln supposedly said that, right? So the question is, did he really say that? Does it even matter if he said that whole thing? So I did a little bit of digging, because maybe you have a certain view of Abraham Lincoln. Maybe you think a certain way about him, the way he lived his life, or the values that he, espoused, whatever, right? So I dug into this, and actually, as it turns out, this quote was not said by Abraham Lincoln, but it was very closely, it was super close to being said by Abraham Lincoln. So there's a book that William H. Herndon and Jesse William White wrote back in 1890. And William Herndon, by the way, was a good friend of Abraham Lincoln. He was like his lawyer. He was a personal friend. And so William Herndon actually wrote this book, The True Story of a Great Life. Like I said, back in 1890 is when this thing was published. And you can see there on your screen on page 439 of the chapter, The Life of Lincoln, then there's this quote. And it says, when I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. And that's my religion. So a lot of people have said, oh, hey, that's Abraham Lincoln. Although if you back up a little bit, you'll notice that as Herndon is talking about Abraham Lincoln, his friend Abraham Lincoln in this book, he says in the sentence before that, he says, in illustration of his religious code, so he's talking about Abraham Lincoln and his religious code, I once heard him, Abraham Lincoln, I once heard him say that it was like that of an old man named Glenn in Indiana, whom he heard speak at a church meeting and who said, when I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. And that's my religion. All right. So in this case, Abraham Lincoln is referencing this man, this old man named Glenn in Indiana, whoever that is, right? But that's the guy named Glenn in Indiana is actually the one who said that. So this is an illustration of in this case, a quote attributed to a person, Abraham Lincoln, and it's almost like you could say Abraham Lincoln said it because he was quoting someone and saying, hey, this is his religious code was like that of what this man said, but it's not exactly what Abraham Lincoln said. And that I wanted to highlight this because that is the nuance sometimes of what we run into on information on the internet. And that is that you'll see a story and it will be mostly true or, partially true, but not all the way true, right? And so it takes a little bit of discernment. It takes a little bit of digging, a little bit of investigation on your own personal part to figure out, hey, is this thing real or not? All right. So I wanted to go through a couple of examples here. This one was off of worldnewsdailyreport.com. So if you were to be sent this website link and you were to read this story, at first it looks like, okay, this is a pretty legit, story, whatever. And there's this family huddled up, there's this damage caused by a storm, whatever. So at first glance, you're like, okay, this seems pretty legit, right? So you start to read, right? And you read the headline, tornado carries mobile home 130 miles, family inside unharmed. And it's like, wait a minute, a tornado carried a mobile home 130 miles? That's crazy, However, maybe that's true. So you start to read in here and it says in Wichita, this would be Wichita, Kansas. It says a family from Tulsa, Oklahoma underwent this scary experience. Their mobile home was carried 130 miles, landing in a rural Kansas area. So taken from Tulsa, Oklahoma, landing in Kansas. 5 members of the family were inside the building during its, quote, flight, and all of them have miraculously survived without injuries, all right? So, and then it goes on to talk about this woman, Dorothy Williams, her husband, her son, her 2 brothers, this F4 tornado. The winds were 200 miles an hour, all that kind of stuff. So again, maybe at first glance, you're like, okay, that seems pretty outrageous, but is it really? I don't know. So a couple of indicators here, because this one is frankly pretty clearly false. But a couple of indicators. Number one, there's no way that a tornado is going to span the distance of 130 miles and be able to carry a mobile home unharmed for that entire distance. That's crazy. It also says in here that the mobile home was carried at an altitude of sometimes up to 1,000 feet. That's crazy. There's no way that it's going to go up that high. And so what I did is I looked at some of the things that it said it did. So apparently it took off from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it went across parts of northern Colorado is what it says, and then it drops down in southern Kansas. So I was like, you know what? Let me get out a map of the United States and just see how feasible that really is. Like, is that even a thing? So here we go. So I just went to Google Maps and I zoomed in on Oklahoma and Kansas and Colorado and all that stuff. So I took the liberty of circling Tulsa, Oklahoma. You can see there on your screen. So apparently this thing would have taken off out of Tulsa, flown northwest, and gone all the way up into northern Colorado, where then it somehow makes some crazy turn and comes all the way back through Kansas, through the southern part of Kansas is what it says, and then lands in Wichita, Kansas. And that is crazy. All right, so just with a little bit of digging, not that you had to dig a lot on that one, a little bit of digging, you could see there's just no way in the world that that's true. A little bit more digging, you would notice that World News Report, or whatever it was, it actually says on the website itself, this is basically a fictitious news site, whatever. So, but I actually talked to a couple people that got that, shared it on Facebook, and they're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this actually happened, praying for the family, whatever. I hope they're safe. But people are easily duped these days. So just by doing a little bit of research, you can start to see, hey, there's no way that this can be true, right? Here's another example. And as I lead into this one, I'll let you know that this is actually legit. There was a study out of Stanford University. Stanford's in California, very reputable university. And they led a study back in 2016, so it's been about 4 years ago. They led a study of trying to determine whether students would know if a website has real or fake information on it, right? And so they gave several different tasks to several different students across 12 different states. So they're looking across, a lot of states here in the United States. They got over 7,800 different responses. And they surveyed middle school students and high school students and college age students. And they asked them things like, hey, can you determine if this certain thing on a website is an ad or is it an actual article, like a newsworthy report kind of a thing? Can you tell if this, social media post was sent by some biased news source? Are they trying to get you to do something or trying to make you believe something and it's clearly biased or not or whatever? They said that if you read the executive summary of this report, it says that their outlook on the state of being for young people today, again, this was as of 2016, is, in their words, bleak. So they basically said, hey, a lot of these people, these students, whatever, have no problem, getting around Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, right? So there's no problem with them navigating the apps themselves. The problem is distinguishing between real and false information. So this page right here is one that they showed them, that the Stanford study group showed these different students. And they asked them things like, if you look at the very top up there where it says, we know you've got a story, and it says Gotham Writers. And you look over to the right, save $20, use code save 20, all that kind of stuff, right? They asked them, is that a link to an actual news story or that kind of thing, or is that an advertisement? And so maybe for many of you who might be watching this, you're going to say, okay, clearly that's an advertisement. One way that you can know is if you look in the very upper right portion of that, you see a little X and then like a little triangular shape looking box, which is one of my telltale signs that that's an ad, because if you hit that X, then the whole thing goes away, or it'll pop up another ad in its place, right? But I think they said something like 80% of the students that they surveyed could not tell that was an ad. So they're like, well, what in the world? If we come down the page a little bit, if you look over to the left, it says, should California stop growing almonds? And they asked him again, is that an actual article by Eric Holthaus, or is that an ad, or whatever? And I don't remember the exact statistics on this specific one, but most of them thought that was like a targeted ad rather than an article. It is actually an article. I mean, it's kind of an opinion piece by Eric Holthaus, obviously, but it is an article. But many of the students thought that was maybe some kind of an environmental group or something like that that's trying to get California to stop growing almonds. Or some even thought, hey, maybe these are almond farmers that are pushing to say, no, they should not stop growing almonds or whatever. But nonetheless, they were thinking one way or the other that this was an actual, ad or something that's trying to get them to think a certain way. And so anyway, you can go through this page and you can see, hey, there's other ads or not ads, that whole thing. In fact, if you look in the bottom left, just under that California Stop Growing Almonds, it says sponsored content, the real reason women don't go into tech. And so clearly that's sponsored by somebody else, right? Or if you look in the bottom right, the slowwatches.com, again, there's that little X with that little triangular looking thing. So they just, even a page like this, they could not tell whether information was real or fake. And so, anyway, so it's an interesting scenario, or an interesting state of being that we have with the students in the world today. Here's one that's a tweet by a lady named Elizabeth Sanders, and this was posted back in March of this year. And I'm going to hit play on here so you can actually see the moving. This is a video, and so this was kind of at the beginning of the coronavirus when it really started getting crazy. And so back in March, on March 20th of this year, this was around 7:51 p.m. She takes a video out of San Diego, California, and it's a train, and this is an actual train with a bunch of tanks that are going through San Diego, California, right? So she says tanks have arrived. And if you notice down there at the very bottom, it's got 33.4 thousand likes, 14,000 retweets. And so this is an example of one where the video itself is not doctored. The tanks on the train are not doctored. So this is real information, but it's taken wildly out of context because I think her implication here, tanks have arrived in San Diego, is that hey, the coronavirus has now been put into full swing. This would have been maybe a week or two after things really started to shut down. And so she's saying, hey, the tanks are arriving. We're going to go into martial law. The military is taking over. The end of the world has arrived, kind of an idea. And so I think that's the message that she was trying to portray. And certainly the likes and the retweets and all that kind of stuff were indicative of that as well. The problem, though, is that this was a train with tanks on it, and they were moving. And if you know anything about San Diego, California, you've got Miramar Naval Station there. You've got a lot of military presence in that area of Southern California. And so these were tanks that were just being transported, from one place to another. And this is actually, as it turns out, not that uncommon of a sight to see some of these go through, San Diego. On top of that, this video itself was actually taken like 4 years ago. So it's like it was taken back in 2016. So in fact, maybe I mentioned that Elizabeth Sanders took the video. I don't think she took the video. In fact, I'm very confident she did not take the video. She just took it from someone else and then reshared and then gave her, her opinion, of course. So anyway, so this is an example of content on the internet that is taken wildly out of context. And so while the video itself is true and undoctored and all that, the context behind it is completely false, which leads you to a false narrative and a false, conclusion about what's going on here. So anyway, so that's another example right there. All right. Let me see here. Here's another one on good old Twitter. Our favorite place in the world, right, for quality and correct information, right? All right, so this was tweeted out by 8.20 at Bree_taught you. She says, so Wayfair.com is it's an online shopping center where you can buy furniture for your house and just stuff like that, right? So she says Wayfair has third-party vendors that are human sex trafficking on their website. There are items like throw pillows, cabinets, etc., priced at $10,000 to $20,000 and named after missing girls. Please be careful. All right. And then she shows right there on the left, you can see Samaya's 5-shelf storage cabinet by WFX Utility. It's almost $13,000. And then to the right, you can see missing from Columbus, Ohio is this 17-year-old named Samaya Moomin, right, or whatever. And then below that, Yuritsa storage cabinet by WFX. It's I think it's about $13,799, so almost $14,000. And then you can see over there to the right, Yuritsa Castro's missing from Harlington, Connecticut. and she's 16 years old. All right, and then you can even see kind of toward the bottom that people say this is sick, and just all that kind of stuff. And clearly, human sex trafficking, of course, is sick. But the problem is none of this was actually true. But you can see there as well, this tweet itself got over 5,000 likes and over 3,000 retweets, right? So Wayfair responded to this, by the way, and there's a group called MediaWise that went and talked to Wayfair and said, hey, maybe we should not have put out this information. And they said that they found out that of the 6 most widely circulated claims of missing children, only one, Yaritza Castro, is still missing. And in fact, one of the girls, if you look down toward the bottom of that screen there, it says that Samaya Moomin, she's quoted as saying, "Why am I mad? I'm mad because I'm not missing." And so her name is thrown out there allegedly as being missing, as a missing child or whatever. So I think that has frustrated her, of course, but also it takes away from the legitimate missing children that are out there. All right. So this is a case of someone saying, hey, I noticed on Wayfair's website that there's like a couch pillow for $10,000, or there's a cabinet for $13,000 or whatever it is. Right. And that's not the right price. As it turns out, when Wayfair was contacted and they talked to the application developers and all that kind of stuff, there was a code glitch that made the price go up like crazy into these really dramatically high prices. And so then they had to take the site offline to fix the code problems, and they brought it back up where it had the correct prices. And of course, people that thought that this was actually sex trafficking, they use that as evidence of their own claims to say, well, hey, we highlighted the fact that this is going on. Now Wayfair has taken their site down, and now, of course, now this is all like legitimized and all that stuff. But that's actually what happened. Wayfair, they had a glitch in the software that made the prices go way up. They took the site down, they fixed the glitch, and then the prices came back to what they should have been all along, right? But again, this is another example of someone saying, hey, I'm seeing someone's name and it's the same as the title of a couch pillow or a cabinet or a whatever, right? Wayfair's response to that is, hey, we named these things what we named them, and if there happens to be a child or a person in the world somewhere that happens to have the name that's the same as what we named it, then that's simply coincident. It's coincidental. We did not knowingly do that, of course. So I think that you could take a name and then you could match those up. Probably wouldn't be that hard, frankly. So anyway, so there's another example of something that did happen, but it was taken completely out of context, and then false claims were made about what happened with it. All right. Here's one that there's this ex-CIA agent who does a lot of, is it real or is it fake kind of stuff on the internet. Cindy Otis is her name. And she found this tweet from someone else who said, hey, please pray for us. The police have warned us that 6,000 rioters and looters are coming by bus here to Notre Dame, Indiana, where I live. They said, be inside by 9 o'clock, lock all your doors. We have plenty of what we need to protect ourselves. I'll keep in touch. Pray for us. Don't forget. So they're scared that 6,000 rioters and looters are headed to this town called Notre Dame, Indiana, right? And this turns out to be false. So anyway, but you can see down there, this is what's crazy to me. You can see down there that 4.8 thousand people have commented. Now, granted, some of the comments are basically telling this person, hey, you're crazy. There's not 6,000 rioters and looters. But 19,000 people have liked this tweet, which is it's crazy to me. And almost 8,000 people retweeted it. So I did a little bit of research. I don't even know where Notre Dame, Indiana is, but suffice it to say, Indiana, great state. I've been there many times. They've got maybe a couple of big cities. Indianapolis is the capital city right in the middle. Notre Dame, Indiana, I suspect is not that big. It wouldn't take long to just Google search Notre Dame, Indiana. But what I did is I said, hey, number one, you can kind of think through this. Number one, why would 6,000 people go to this little town, Notre Dame in Indiana? Now, there is a college called Notre Dame in Indiana, but it's not in Notre Dame, Indiana. It's in South Bend, Indiana. So anyway, so maybe there's a little town in Indiana named Notre Dame. Why would 6,000 people come by bus there to go? The other thing that I thought is, if you put 6,000 people on buses, how many buses would that take? So I did a little bit of research on Google just on that part. And I said, all right, how many people fit on a bus? That's exactly what I typed in on Google. How many people fit on a bus? 56 seats. So you can see down there, over there, kind of on the right. A charter bus will have between 47 and 56, a minibus between 18 and 25. So I said, okay, let's just assume that not every single bus is completely packed, to the rim or whatever. And you put 50 people on each bus. All right. How many buses are going to be lined up into Notre Dame, Indiana? So you can see down there, 6,000 people divided by 50 people per bus would be 120 buses that are needed. So I guess one way to kind of fact check this, if you will, is kind of look around and say, hey, have 120 buses lined up and rolled into Notre Dame, Indiana lately? The answer is very likely no, right? And in this case, it was no. So this is someone, I don't even know why they sent this out, but maybe they heard it from someone else, and then just immediately it goes to Twitter and they have to tweet about it, and then thousands of people like it and retweet it, and it just, it explodes. So anyway, so I wanted to share all of that stuff with you to say that I'm gonna remove that and come on back with everybody here. I share all that to say that you've got to take a little bit of personal responsibility, right? And then let me and honestly, I was not looking at some of the comments. Let me highlight some of the comments here. So Steve McAllister, love the topic. I use motivational quotes to get me through the day. I'm always leery. The famous person actually said that. Yeah, and that's a great point, Steve. It's like, hey, did that person really say it? And honestly, I don't know. You could do a little bit of fact checking. What I tend to do is, if I can check maybe several sources, and I can figure out, hey, yeah, several sources are saying that that this person actually said that, then I'll go ahead and quote and say, hey, this person said that. If I cannot find that, then sometimes what I'll do is, if I'm giving a speech or if I'm giving a presentation or whatever, is I'll say, hey, this quote is attributed to this person, but I could not confirm that, so I don't really know if this person actually said it, but hey, nonetheless, here's the quote that I like, right? So that's that's something you can do as well. All right, Pytil, it's good to see you again. I know you've been on here many times, so it's awesome, man. But I saw it on TV. Mrs. Williams had a dog named Toto. That's right. That's awesome. Yeah, the going back to that tornado and the mobile home. That was a few astute viewers noticed that the person who got blown all around, her first name was Dorothy, and then of course many of you have seen The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy and Toto and all that with the Kansas tornado. So that's makes it a little suspicious. As well. And then Pasilva, 2.5 million views also. I know, yeah, on a lot of these things, they just kind of blow up, people don't fact check themselves. They don't double check. They don't dig in, whatever. But the thing that I was going to kind of end on today is maybe doing a little bit of a personal reflection when you encounter information on the internet. And these are just kind of my suggestions on what you could go through, practically speaking, to figure out, hey, how do I handle this information that I've just read on the internet? And the first question that I like to ask myself, and I would say you can ask yourself, is, do I even care, right? Do I even care that this thing happened? And I'm not trying to say be apathetic and don't care about the personal well-being of other people and all that stuff. Certainly we need to do that. But there are many, many things out there and I'll pick on Twitter because it's just this crazy place that frankly, I don't even care. So let me just move on with my life, right? Now, if I do care for whatever reason, then I have to ask myself next, is it worth investigating this thing? So maybe I do care, but I care to the extent that it's like, okay, that's interesting, and I'm gonna, maybe move on with my life still. Or maybe I'll kind of, notch that in my brain to say, okay, I just learned something. But a lot of these things may be worth investigating. If you do care pretty deeply about them, then maybe it's like, hey, let's investigate this. Another couple of things to do is consider the source that said it. And so, in the case of that Real World News Daily website or whatever, you can look on the site itself, and it even says on the site, hey, this is a fake news or not a real news or whatever kind of site. You can even Google, like if it didn't say that, for example, you could Google, hey, reviews on that website, what are people talking about, whatever. And the more and more, research that you do, the more opinions that you start to get, along the way, you'll start to get a little bit better feel for, hey, this is a really reputable place, and the person that said it is probably saying the truth, or probably more frequently, honestly, is, hey, this person doesn't really know what they're talking about, or maybe they have some kind of a bias that would push them to say whatever they're saying, that kind of a thing. So anyway, so consider the source. Also check the author, if there's not just the source of like a website, but maybe the author, himself or herself. Go and see, what else have they done. Check the date on these things. I go back to that San Diego tanks rolling through the city. That was 4 years ago, and it's like, okay, well, that was way before the coronavirus. So clearly, that's not the U.S. government trying to declare martial law on Southern California because of the coronavirus. That was a totally different, just military movement kind of a thing. And then, like I said, you can check other sources to see, hey, has this been cross-referenced anywhere else that I might trust or whatever. But those are some good ways to check and see, hey, is this information real or is it fake? But at the end of the day, it's going to take personal responsibility. It's going to take some personal effort from you, obviously personal. And so you need to just be willing to give that effort to say, hey, I need to know for myself because I care deeply about this, or this matters to me for one reason or another. So I'm going to do the research it takes to figure out if this is true. And so what I would encourage all of us to do also, and I'll end on this, is keep your emotions in check, and don't fly off the handle. If you see one tweet from someone and they say something outrageous, and then you think, hey, the thing that they just made a claim about is just infuriating to me, and I can't believe, and maybe they're not even the ones that did it, but they're making a claim that someone else did something, and that's just so infuriating to me that other person would have done what this person claimed, right? Just relax for a second, count to 10, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, hey, let me check into this. Let me see if that's even true at all. Maybe it turns out to be true, and maybe you have every reason to be infuriated at the end of it all. But do your due diligence, look into this stuff, and make sure that you check it out, and check some sources and do all the things that we did today. So anyway, hey, I hope you have enjoyed this security sidebar. So let me throw a couple other things up here. So Microsoft released the deepfake detector on 9/1. Interesting, very interesting. Deepfake, that's another crazy thing, and that's another thing that that with these deepfake videos or pictures or whatever, that it's going to be more difficult to figure out, hey, did that person really say that or not? That's one of the big reasons that I say, hey, just take a pause, take a deep breath, and maybe question that a little bit before you just jump in and say, hey, yeah, that's definitely true, and I'm going to get infuriated over it now or whatever. All right. And then Leslie, great point. Don't trust and do verify. Yeah, I think that was Ronald Reagan, and I will say that I believe this quote is attributed to Ronald Reagan, but I don't remember, and I'm not 100% sure. But he said, trust but verify. And it's, regardless of who said it, frankly, it's a good lesson in life. So anyway, hey, this has been an awesome time with everybody to connect, to talk about security related stuff. You guys send in comments or send in suggestions on what you want to talk about on this show, and we'll be happy to. One thing that I do want to get into on this show, just as we move forward into the future, is some of the technical related security stuff. Like one of the videos that we have on DevCentral is, how does the TLS handshake work? So stuff like that, or what is TLS 1.3? How does Diffie-Hellman work? What is RSA? Some of the security related stuff that you're going to see around the internet. Maybe what's the difference between HTTP and HTTPS? Those kinds of things to dive into. Hey, this is how all of this stuff works. So anyway, with that, I will say we're going to be back next week for DevCentral, or on DevCentral Connects, me and Jason Rahm. and we will look forward to seeing you guys there. So tune in next Thursday at 12:30 Pacific, and we will look forward to connecting with all of you, the DevCentral community. So thanks for watching here on Security Sidebar, and we will see you guys next time.